Hello, welcome inside the scores table. My name is Brian Henson with the Indianapolis Star. Danny Raga, longtime basketball coach, here to recap the week that was. We're going to be joined by Lapel girls basketball coach Zach Newby here in a little bit. But in the meantime, we're going to talk about some games from last week. And Danny, the one that we wanted to start with is last night, the big showdown between Warsaw and Northridge. You had a chance to watch that game. I saw some stats and was followed along between your text and on Twitter. Number 3 Warsaw comes away with a 69-44 win over the number 7 Northridge. Jocelyn Bricker, my God, I mean, every text is like Jocelyn Bricker just hit another three. She hits her first 5 from 3, had 21 points by the midway point of the second quarter, finished with 27 and 6 triples. I mean, just an unbelievable performance from her and a really impressive win from Warsaw, a team that I was curious to see how they'd respond as the competition gets harder, and they're going to have Homestead here in a couple of weeks, a game that you and I are both hoping to get up there for. But every challenge they've met, and they've met it in impressive fashion now. And I'm coming around to your side, man. I'm really starting to buy in. Not that I don't buy in. I believe in the Tigers, but they're moving up my power rankings of teams that I haven't had a chance to see yet.
Yeah, I'm more bullish on Warsaw than I would say most. And again, I think it's because I just trust my own eyes and just what they see. So let's take this, for example, right? So Chastain, who's been a starter that's shooting like 70% from the field this year, that is their rim runner, was out. I didn't know she was out. I actually don't know the context with or the reason why she was out. But when they were doing starting lineups last night, Peterson gets introduced, and I'm like, oh, they changed their starting lineup. And then I saw Chastain in street clothes, and I was thinking, oh, I wonder what this is going to do to their secondary break, because Peterson is a perimeter 3-point shooter. That's what she does best. Well, they inserted Peterson into the Chastain role on rim runner in their secondary break. Like it's a small thing, but it's also a really big thing. And I think it exemplifies how implemented that system is and how bought into these kids that system is. So they lose a starter last night, come out, insert Peterson into the starting lineup, and they don't skip a beat because they scored 25 points in the first quarter.
That's unbelievable. Oh my! And like you point to all the time when we talk off air and on air, just their efficiency Warsaw's is. And that's the thing that jumps out to me too. And then just the variety of weapons. Like I first saw them over the summer against LC and in another game. I can't remember who they played, but just that, like you said, the efficiency and the number of weapons that they have. I mean, Bricker went off last night. Zartman's really good. Brooke Winchester's a Ball State commit. She gives them some real size inside and is just, a tough looking kid. Just they can beat you in so many different ways. And to see that, to see how a team rallies too when they don't have their best players, impressive. On the Northridge side too, I know that you were high on them coming in. They hung around there. Like it felt like, just seeing the score updates from you, it looked like it was a little bit tighter than what the final score indicated. Like right around that, after a slow start, they kind of kept it within that 8 to 10 range, and it never really got worse than that until later in the game.
Yes. So they Warsaw unfolded in the first quarter. Okay. Mm-hmm. Bricker had 5 threes on 5 attempts in the first quarter. Another field goal. I don't think she missed. Warsaw, let me just kind of look through. I mean, Warsaw probably only missed 3 or 4 shots in the first quarter. Okay. So at the end of the first frame, it's 25-18 Northridge. Mm-hmm. Or excuse me, 25-18 Warsaw. Okay. But the number that you need to focus on is the 18 that Northridge had. It is very difficult to keep pace. I've been saying this every single week. It's very difficult to keep pace with Warsaw offensively, because and that's regardless of what your defensive plan is. Okay. And Northridge's defensive plan, Coach Springer's, we're going to take away Zartman. And I think that's more mathematical than anything else. If we eliminate these, what's he averaging? 17, 18, 19 points per basketball game in those threes. If we can eliminate that and take our chances with Bricker and Winchester and Neely kind of doing the lion's share of the rest of the scoring, we think that we can stay in this basketball game. Mm-hmm. So let's kind of stay there for a second. Zartman unofficially I had finishing at 8 points. She had a sweet slide 3, by the way, but she had to work for everything that she got. Winchester battled foul trouble all night and only had 2. They got 10 points from 2 of the better scorers anywhere in the state, regardless of class. And Warsaw still won by over a dozen. So I think what that does is on one hand it says, hey, Warsaw's a wagon. I've been saying that kind of all month or last couple of months. But it also says that, you have to have offensive firepower in order to maintain it. Because if you look at it, there's Warsaw gets away and wins the second quarter. Warsaw wins the third quarter. Warsaw wins the fourth. I mean, they just win each quarter and each frame. But to kind of double back off of Northridge back into Warsaw, a lot of their efficiency, and I saw it last night. I didn't necessarily see it. Coach Krebs will run stuff for his shooters. Okay, out of timeouts at the beginning of quarters, end of quarters. Like there's a lot of stuff that's being run for Zartman particularly. And why wouldn't you when you have a 49% 3-point shooter with the volume that she has? I mean, she's shooting the ball, I would probably say, from the 3-point line better than anybody right now from a volume perspective, because everybody knows who she is. But I could tell in watching that basketball game that the scout was to attack them off the bounce. They felt like I probably felt like they had size against Rieksecker and Goodwin. And Neely, the first possession of the basketball game, went downhill and attacked Rieksecker, got a bucket. The second possession, Bricker attacks Goodwin off the bounce. I mean, it just seemed like we are going to attack their smaller guards with our bigger guards and be relentless about it. It forced Coach Springer to actually make a change halfway through the first quarter. He actually moved Lily Scholl onto Jocelyn Bricker when Jocelyn Bricker was going bonkers. She ended up finishing with 17 first quarter points, but Springer recognized right away, hey, they're attacking us off the bounce. I'm going to move my bigger, most athletic person onto Bricker. And then she had to give a step and a couple of hand down, man down threes. Suddenly she has 5 threes and now they're playing catch up. Now they caught up. Like Northridge caught up. Like Northridge is good. My position on Northridge stands. I think they're going to be a very tough out. But my position on Warsaw as being a top tier, top of state talent that can win a state championship. I saw nothing to back off of that.
And it's interesting too. It's a sectional preview coming up there. I mean, that sectional is probably going to come down to Warsaw or Northridge, barring something by Elkhart, Concord, or Goshen. So, I mean, we're probably going to see that again. I'm really curious to see how Warsaw does against Homestead. Northridge played Homestead to a 2-point game at the beginning of the year. Warsaw has to go out to their place on January 21st. That's kind of like their last big test, and they close out with a couple 3A schools and Concord. So it'll be interesting. Danny, I got one other question for you. I apologize to jump this on you before we get to Newby, but how would you defend Warsaw? We just discussed their weapons. We discussed on what makes them so good. So as an opposing coach, I'm curious to hear how you would approach that.
I think you have to slow them down, like speed wise, because that's what they want to do. That's how Brooke Zartman. I said Coach Krebs runs a lot of stuff for shooters. That's not like a set X and O inked play on the board. I mean, running stuff can be, I'm just going to run her in secondary break to the right wing. And if you don't sprint back every single time, I'm going to get the best catch and release 3-point shooter in the state free looks. So the first thing that I would do is I would sprint back. Okay. And I agree with Coach Springer. I think I would have face guard draped over Zartman. The issue with that is Jocelyn Bricker is the real deal. Okay. So I think this is top of class talent. Okay. And I'm not saying she's the best player in the state at that class, but I'm saying when you talk about the 5, 6, 7, 8 best players in the state in respective classes, Jocelyn Bricker belongs in that. And it's not the 27 points. It's not the 30 points that she had against Columbia City, which those two, the 27 on the road at Northridge and the 30 on the road at Columbia City, 57 in two of the hardest places to play, does say that she has big game DNA. Okay. But she blocked 2 Conley threes in the fourth quarter. She was 6 of 6 from the free throw line. She was dealing out assists. She was getting rebounds. She was running the floor, and she was stoic the entire time. Like you couldn't really tell. So I to double back to the original question is you've got to limit possessions the way that HSE did against Lawrence Central, the way that Center Grove likes to do. You have to limit possessions against them. And that really starts with just sprinting back, crashing the defensive glass. And then if you're going to take a defender and commit her full time to Zartman, then you've got to keep Bricker out of the paint, or you got to keep the ball off the net. And I think that's a very difficult thing. I think if Springer had to do it again, I think he maybe would take. They did one possession. I think I saw one possession of like triangle and two. But I've screened a ton of Warsaw this year, a ton. I think every game that they have on YouTube, they have a good YouTube channel, Tiger Broadcast Network. They play the radio over it, so you can be very educated in watching them. They've seen it all. They've seen box and one, they've seen triangle and two, they've seen face guard man, they've seen zone, they've seen press, and they seem to have answered every test. So did I duck that question enough for you to say I don't know? Like at the end of the day, like Bricker's just making plays in these big games as she did in this one. So if you go back and watch that, it won't take you but half a quarter to be like that kid right there is different than everybody else.
Good stuff. And that's fun, Danny, because you mentioned a lot of things too. We're gonna bring up here in just a minute with our guest Zach Newby of the way that his star player Lanaya Wills, who's also one of the top juniors in the state, is being guarded. Some of the different things that they've had to address, some ways that they've shifted around. Lapel's 12-6 on the year. They had the loss to Pendleton Heights. That's when I saw them for the first time. You saw them beat Eastern Hancock early this year. We'll see them again here in a couple of days when they take on Sheridan in what should be a really fun game with Lanaya Wills and Kenzie Garner coming up there, a sectional preview there. So we'll go ahead and we'll bring on Coach Newby, friend of the show. He's back again. We're excited to have him. Zach, what's up, buddy?
What's up, fellas?
There he is. What's going on, man?
Just trying to prep for this week.
So let's start with the Pendleton Heights game. We'll kind of start big picture and then narrow it down, and obviously want to talk about Lanaya. But we talked after that game, Zach, and it felt like it was closer than the final score indicated. It just a couple plays here or there go the wrong way, kind of indicative of a young team and maybe leaning a little bit too much on Lanaya to make something happen. Yeah,
I mean, they're really good. I'm not going to deny that. They've got obviously Casey and Ada are two phenomenal individual players, and then their role players are studs too. I mean, it's just they play with so much pressure and they play with so much poise, and Casey's so dang fast. I mean, you can't – I don't really think you can stop her when she gets going full speed. I mean, unless you're just going to foul her every time, which we're not deep enough to do. So, we had a slow start, and then I felt like we cut it to 8 or 10, and I think we had a shot, and then it was like Casey, boom, boom, rebound, down, layup, and then your heads kind of go down again. So it's still a learning process for us. I got a lot of kids and new roles and playing a lot of sophomores, and so they're still trying to figure out how do I play in big games and how do I not just try to throw it to Lanaya every single time. I got to be aggressive and look for myself because teams see that. I mean, coaches are smart. They see that on film. Like, hey, anytime there's a big game, Lanaya shoots it 35 times and everybody else shoots it maybe 15 combined. So we gotta change that.
Looks like a good response then to Anderson though. A couple nights later.
I wouldn't say a good response. They definitely have improved a ton, and they play a tough 4A schedule. And when you get a school like that I think they came in at like 1-15, they want to win. I mean, they see a team like Lapel, not that we're bad by any means, but that's a game they're like, hey, we got to be able to compete and win these games because a lot of these other games we have no chance. So the first game of the year when, we beat up on them, it was all new for them. So that made a big difference. And we did not play well Thursday. I mean, we were not happy with ourselves and how we responded to not playing well. But it's also hard when you've won county back-to-back years, and then you got to go play in a consolation bracket at Anderson Preparatory Academy on a Thursday night. That's tough to get up for that kind of game.
Great question by me. Thank you, Zach. Really whiffed it. Go ahead, Danny. I'm going to sit a couple out.
I was just going on and on about how I think Jocelyn Bricker is one of the best kids in the class. You're not going to mention many names before you get to your 2026 and Lanaya Wills. So let's just start the conversation there, just real open-ended, we could talk about her for an entire pod. She's got so much going on. So just talk to us about her progression, just maybe from the beginning of this season with a new surrounding cast around her to where we are now.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a new year for her. She's always been surrounded by a lot of talent. Obviously, our 2023 and 2024 years were special years, and you get to play with kids. We had Renahan and Hazeman and Hubble when she was a freshman with Pointer, and then you had Pointer last year, who was just, you can't get a whole lot better at our level, a number 2 than she was. And so this year she knew it was going to be different. And this summer was a rough June for us. We played probably too hard of a schedule. We played Penn and we played Northridge and we played South Knox. We played Mooresville twice. It was just crazy, the teams we played. We went to IU and played a couple teams from Ohio that were just not our level, obviously. So this summer was rough, and Lanai was kind of looking at me like, this is going to be, I don't know what we're going to do. But those kids' growth, the surrounding kids' growth has been huge for us, and Lanai is starting to figure out how to play off of them. And also she's played with the ball in her hands a lot the last 2 years, but now playing more perimeter, bringing the ball up the floor. When our point guard is out, she's our point guard. So doing a great job of mixing inside out. She shot a lot more threes. She's probably shot more threes this year than she has freshman, sophomore year combined. And so her attitude has been really good. Her leadership has been really good. I can't say enough about her. She's such a great kid and just wants to win. Her will to win is crazy. And a lot of people don't understand at 2A level, I don't have 20 kids who just eat, sleep, and breathe basketball. They're not getting in the gym a ton to fight for extra time. A lot of kids are playing so that we can have a team. And, I don't have anything else to do in the winter. So they don't have the same goals as she has. And that makes a difference.
Go back to the just one more, Hank. So
sure, no, go ahead.
Go back to the we brought it up last week. She had 48 in a basketball game. Okay. Like read these like tweets, so-and-so had 25 points and 12. It's like the social media like point thing. It's a little bit exhausting. Okay. But then you have like a really special performance, like a 48. What were you had a front row seat. Just tell us about it. What were you watching?
She just finds ways to score. And a big thing is her rebounding. When other kids miss, she's just cleaning it up. And if you're not going to block her out, even when you do, sometimes it doesn't matter. But and her finishes around the rim. And then if she gets going from the perimeter, she can put up 40 anytime she wants. Because it's really hard when my other kids are being aggressive. It's really hard to help off because they're pretty good shooters from the perimeter. So she'll blow by you if you're going to try to pressure at the perimeter. But then if you got a hand down, she's so long, she can shoot over you. And if she gets that going, you could be in trouble because she feels it then. Then she loves to go inside out. I'm going to post you this possession. I'm going to play you outside this possession. I'm going to drive you now. So it's hard. And if she gets a defensive rebound, a long one, and she gets off running and you got to play one-on-one with her in the full court, that's a tough ask too.
She plays on your state runner-up team as a freshman, now as a junior. The numbers she's putting up, shooting 50% from the field, which is on par with what she's done over her career. You mentioned the three-point shooting, 36% from three, and she's shot 53 threes this season, 59 last season. So her efficiency's improved while still shooting at the same clip. And then the rebounding, 14 boards a game, 26 points a game. Just across the board, the numbers are insane. But Zach, I'm curious from you, what's been her biggest growth points that you've seen from year one now to year, almost through year three?
I'll just say maturity as a kid. She's just growing up a ton. She takes coaching a lot better. willing to talk to her teammates and be open. She knows you can't just say, hey, you're a leader now. You're a junior. You're our best player. You're a leader. You can't just force that on a kid. You can either lead or you can't. And she has I gave her a couple books to read before the season started just on leadership. And, she bought into that and just wanting to grow as a person. She's actually at church with my wife right now. She goes to church with us on Sundays. And I was doing this and I was like, hey, I'm not going to be there. And she's like, I don't care. Have her pick me up. And so she just wants to grow as a person. And that's for a 16-year-old kid. That's more important to me than anything she can do on the basketball floor. And then also, I'm looking at my book because I know she had just talking about her maturity. She had 7 against Yorktown and we did not play well. And that's probably the worst game of her career. Mm-hmm. And then I think she went 23, 48, 39, 29.
It's an Eastern Hancock game, yeah.
27, 28, 29. So,
good,
you go from having 7 and you don't feel sorry for yourself. She got in the gym, she shot, she looked herself in the mirror and knows if I don't get big numbers, we're going to have a hard time winning. So she's just, I'm going to go get big numbers every single night.
How do you facilitate the trust in her teammates? Like, how do you get her to I guess, take a leap of faith, so to speak, and get her trust in teammates?
Well, for her, she's always telling her teammates, you have to shoot the ball. You have to be aggressive. If I'm setting you a ball screen, they're not going to help. You have to attack. You have to create. And she tells kids all the time, like, you don't have to worry about getting me the ball. I'll get the ball. Like, if I want the ball, I'll come get it. Or if you shoot it, I'll go get it. So you don't have to worry about how am I going to get Lanaya the ball. She knows when she needs it, she'll get it.
Danny?
Well, let's just parlay this into the postseason. What's the ceiling for the team?
The tournament's just crazy. One, we got to stay healthy, obviously. We're not super deep. So, I got one senior out right now. She was trying to battle through for county. And I could just tell she wasn't right. And then in the Anderson game, she battled too. And it was a rough one for her. And I could just tell she couldn't move. So we talked on Friday and I was like, hey, we need to shut this down and get you right so that you can play in the postseason. So we got to get her back. And then, the sectional is kind of open. Obviously Sheridan is really good and it's at Sheridan. Frankton is, in our school district and historically is a good girls basketball program. So, that's not somebody you can look past. I think a lot of it's going to depend on the draw. I think it always does in high school basketball where, for my team, ordinarily, like last year, I liked playing Ellick first. I wanted to get the second best team out of the way right off the bat with fresh legs and I had experience. Now having some young kids and playing a major role in a postseason where if you lose, you're done. I probably would rather play Sheridan or Frankton later on so that we can, just get them comfortable. Because that first, for everybody, it doesn't matter how good a player you are, that first couple possessions or quarter of a sectional game is stressful. And so hopefully maybe a game we can be a little bit more relaxed would be helpful. And then you get out of the sectional, anything can happen. The regionals at Lapel again. So that's a 1-game deal there. And so you find a way to win that one, and our kids have been there the last couple of years. So, or at least a few of them have played major minutes. So, and then it's insane how it can happen. In 2023, if you would have told me, in January, you're going to be playing for a state championship, I would have said, you're crazy. That didn't even seem real. So I'm super confident. I know we have talent that can do it. They just got to have a little confidence in themselves.
One more before I throw it back to Hank about junk defense. And junk has a negative connotation to it. I asked this question on the back end of asking about the postseason because those are all 1-game seasons, right? You're just trying to give yourself the best chance to win a basketball game. Okay. Are you guys getting junk defense a lot? Is there a lot of face guard? Is there a lot of box and one? You mentioned Sheridan. I'm sure Garner's seeing a ton of it at Sheridan. So, what's your philosophy, or where's your head at when you've had games this year where it's a box and one on Lanaya, for example?
We've had teams try, but it's just, I think that it's a little bit easier when you have somebody that's one-dimensional. If you got if a team's got two kids that can just really shoot the ball, it's easy to triangle in two, because we don't have to go out on those other people and we can just chase these two. With a box and one, it's easier to double somebody in the post if you're chasing them, and then you can just front them and have help on the backside. But
so like Zartman, you're talking like Zartman, for example. Hank asked the question earlier. We were having the conversation. I think you were probably in the waiting room. When they see junk defense, Zartman is the one that sees it most of the time. And you're saying it's because you think that I don't want to – sounds disrespectful when I say one-dimensional. She's doing that one dimension better than anybody else in the state. Let's just be clear on that, right? But so that essentially is – would you face guard Zartman then because she's –
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay. And if I'm playing a really good post player, I don't need to put somebody big on them necessarily. I can just front you and just have backside help and have you sandwich the whole time, and I'm going to make everybody else make plays. And that's what Pendleton did to us, where they didn't really junk it, but they had Ada on Lanaya. And then they didn't guard my senior, who I said was hurt, because she doesn't – all year we've been telling her you got to shoot it. And she's probably only shot the ball maybe 15 times all year. And so they just didn't even guard her. And then Lanaya, she can drive by Hupper every single time, but there's help standing right there in the middle of the lane. So that is something I think you have to have everybody on the floor willing to shoot the ball and willing to be aggressive. You have to be involved offensively. If you're playing 4-on-5 offensively, you're gonna struggle. So we tell kids all the time, you have to be confident enough in yourself to shoot it, or you better be a very good screener and get other people open, or you're just not gonna be able to play. So I'm trying to think who junked us. Winchester, Holly Gutierrez, I don't know how well you know her, but she's had some really good teams at Winchester, played for some state championships. She loves the junk defense. She loves the box and one or triangle and two. But, we've been shooting mid 30% as a team from three on the year, and it's hard to box and one or triangle and two because you're going to give up wide open threes. So I'm just going to put shooters on the floor, and if you want to chase Lanaya, but she's going to get misses and putbacks. She's just hard to – I feel like if she stops herself. That game against Yorktown, she just didn't shoot it well, and she got in her own head and just struggled all night. And so, that doesn't happen that's the only time I've ever seen it happen in 2.5 years.
Looking ahead now, Sheridan coming up this week, sectionals right around the corner. As a coach, how much do you play close to the vest? Are you going to be testing out a bunch of things, or do you play kind of vanilla? And what do you expect from the other side?
I don't read into it that much, I don't think. I do think about, calling I think if they want to see a set, they're going to get it. They can get film and they can see what we run. And so I'm going to treat it like any other game. I truly believe that the better team is normally going to win. And if we beat them on Tuesday or they beat us, that has no bearing on what's going to happen sectional week. There's so many things that can go differently in a basketball game that, who knows? So, we're going to try to win the game. I was given my daughter's in second grade, and Sheridan came over a few weeks ago and played. And there was a couple people that came up and talked to me, excited about the game and all this. And I love to mess with people. So I was like, well, I'm not going to play Lanaya. and I'm not going to play this weekend, so you're not going to see much. And they were like, "Oh, but it would be such a good game." So I'm letting them believe that they're not even going to see my best player. But she'd kill me if I told her she wasn't going to get to play.
Yeah. Breaking news, Hank. Breaking news.
I'm going to write the report right now.
Healthy scratch.
Yeah. Healthy
scratch. She's got a few records she's chasing, so she's I'd be on the floor.
One more from me, Zach, and I wanted to talk to you about your point guard, Layla Dawson. I've seen some of the numbers. Rob Hunt and I were talking during the game, and I think he was the first person from either side that he pointed out and talked about, and just her development, her kind of getting more comfortable, running the offense, settling in. Just how have you seen her develop over the course of this season?
Well, that's a special one for me because that's my niece. So that's my sister's daughter. And we've got a special relationship outside of basketball. She's one of my best friends, so I love that kid as more than anything. She's an awesome kid. And last year she dealt with compartment syndrome. So we thought as a freshman she'd come in and play right away. And that was going to be hard for me playing my freshman niece at point guard. And I was super excited about it, but then it was tough because she could still move, but she wasn't herself, and no one really knew what it was. And so she had a tough freshman year, and then she had, her surgery in March on her legs, and we weren't sure how it was gonna work. And so she was a kid who was all basketball. Since I can remember, she said she's going to be the first girl in the NBA. Like, that was her goal. She wanted to play high level. Everything was about basketball. And then when she got her legs taken away, it completely shifted to where I just want to be able to play basketball again. And so to see her be on the floor and play at a high level again and starting to figure out this game, this varsity game, is so much fun for me. And I coach her hard and too hard sometimes, but I know, she has greatness in her. She can handle it. She's an odd kid she's right-handed. She doesn't shoots it right-handed, but she's really left-hand dominant. So she can shoot it with her left hand too. Like, if you watch her shoot a jump shot with her left hand, it looks just like she shoots it with her right hand. She's a really good passer. She's just trying to figure out, the stuff that was there at the JV level in middle school is not there in high school. And you have to see it before it happens. You got to be making that play before it happens. And so the beginning of this year was reactionary, and now she's starting to anticipate the game a little bit. And I told her, you getting to play a couple of years with Lanaya Wills is huge, because if you just throw it high to her, you can't really make a mistake. Mm-hmm. But lately she's been getting in the paint, and we actually talked at practice the other day. When she's playing hard and playing fast and not thinking about anything, she just has this look on her face. She makes an O with her mouth, and I'm like, that's the kid we need. Have an O on your mouth all the time, attacking the paint, 2 feet in the paint, looking to score, looking to dish. So getting to see her development and play with some joy again it means everything to me, because she is such a special kid. Anybody that knows her as a person, she would do anything for anyone. And she's not like a lot of the kids that you meet. She's the kid walking around the school with a Bible in her hand, and that's just who she is, and she's comfortable and confident in that. And she would rather talk to you about Jesus than basketball. That is who she is, and I love that about her.
That's fantastic. Well, Zach, thanks so much, man, for hopping on with us. I'll be seeing you again here this week with the Sheridan game, and then hopefully bouncing out to practice too. But best of luck to you, buddy, and I'm sure we'll talk here again soon on the show.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I'm happy to join anytime. I appreciate talking to you, and love listening to the show.
Appreciate it, buddy. Talk to you later.
Thanks, Newby. See you, buddy.
Yeah, see you guys later.
Zach Newby, head girls basketball coach over there at Lapel. Great stuff. And I love talking basketball with that guy.
Yeah. I didn't realize that the Lapel Sheridan game was this week. Where's that? What night?
Tuesday night.
Yeah.
Tuesday night at Sheridan.
Yeah. Garner and Wills. Both of them figure to be very important pieces in writing the story and who's going to win that class, right?
And I'm curious too, because it seems like just Sheridan there, you have a little bit more depth. Obviously, everything runs through Kenzie, same as everything runs through Lanai for Lapel, but there's a little bit of more experience there with Cecilia Tim and Kenzie's cousin Brielle. There's some other pieces there, a little bit more established than what Lapel has. But like Newby said, I mean, before that loss to Pendleton Knights, it was 3-6-game win streak, I think it was, including the Eastern Hancock win. They beat a solid university team, so there's some positives with it preceding that. And it's just a matter of unlocking and sustaining that level of competition and that level of performance and confidence in the girls. And I have no doubt that nobody will do that. One other Madison County tournament update: Casey Warfel last night in leading Pendleton to the county title. She now has 1,908 points, so she's closing in on the 2,000-point mark, which I'm sure she's going to get here before year's end. But an impressive number of points for Casey Warfel, who just continues to tear it up. She's come a long way since that first game we all kind of took notice, or at least I did, against Fishers her freshman year when they upset the Tigers, who would go on to finish state runner-up that year. Or no, who went on to have a great season and state runner-up the year after. So congratulations to Casey on that accomplishment.
2000's that's a different number. I am totally guessing here, but I don't think there could be 15 players in the state that have scored 2,000 points. Like Sydney Parrish, for example, I think is currently the all-time leading scorer at HSC. I know Makaluski's closing in on that, but she didn't even reach 2,000. I think she capped out at about 1,800. But I just thinking like in recent history, some of those kids, I know Dana Evans got there, Madison Layden got there. I mean, it isn't many. So congratulations to the Warfel family, Pendleton Heights, and Casey specifically on getting that. That's quite the feat.
They both, her and Jacqueline Hosier. Jacqueline Hosier's just ahead of Casey on the all-time points list. I read this here from friend of the show, Rob Hunt. Jacqueline Hosier has 1,919 points. They both just passed Westfield coach Kelsey Key, who played at Frankton, and they're third and fourth in the all-time list. They're chasing down that all-time county scoring record. Lanaya Wills, by the way, 29 points, 11 rebounds last night. She's closing in on 1,500 points and 1,000 rebounds already as a junior, which is just insane. And they've all both of those, Casey and Lanaya, Lapel and Pendleton, have both played some really tough schedules and some tough teams, and they've put up really good numbers against that competition. So it's fun to see and adds a little bit of validity, I think, to those accomplishments. Danny boy, let's talk about the game that I was at and that you screened on whatever yesterday was, Saturday, some people tell me. Lawrence North versus Noblesville. I'll start big picture. I texted you this. I wrote about it on IndyStar.com. That felt like a game that if it were played in November, it would go one of two ways. Either Lawrence North would go in at shell down 18 and lose the game by 30, similar to what we saw against South Bend, Washington, or Noblesville would lean too hard on Tipner, would not get enough production from the pieces surrounding her, and would end up letting a lead slip away late after doing such a good job of controlling the tempo in that game. And instead what we saw was Noblesville really balance it out well. Cece quickly started really strong, had a huge block late. Kate Rollins continues to be on just this great heater. Allie Hutchinson hit some big shots early, made some plays late, setting up the freshman. Maya Blower for a critical layup late. Blower, again, plays really well at that point guard position for Noblesville. And then on the other side, LN, I finally got to see it in person and in action, but just the resiliency of that team and the way that they've been coached up and are kind of developing that tough skin is just such an encouraging thing to see, because before it kind of felt like they get hit in the mouth and they'd fold. Now it's like they get hit in the mouth, they recover, and then they start hitting back. And yesterday it was chipping away at an 18-point deficit where they went over about a quarter worth of game time without a field goal, and they weren't rebounding. They were doing a lot of standing out and watching. Stephen Thomas, we talked after the game, it just kind of like they were shooting the ball so well during that 5-game win streak that I think human instinct kind of kicks in, and you kind of let your foot off the gas a little bit and trust your teammates to hit these shots. So you don't fight for the rebounds in our position for them, and that really killed them. They get back that part of their game. Jemiah Thomas goes off. We'll talk about her a little bit more in depth in a minute, but just a really impressive battle back from Lawrence North, and I don't know how you couldn't be impressed with both teams coming away from that one.
Yeah, the 18-point deficit was I made a mental note that it was about 3.5 minutes. I think, I'm not sure if you mentioned that, but they were down 18, 39-21. Just a global thought about both sides before we get granular into the actual basketball game. The the development, it's a lesson to us all, right? That not to rush to judgment. If you see young players starting their varsity careers, maybe early in the season, oh, that kid's no good, or that kid's not going to contribute, or this team is this, or this team is that. Clea Bentley and Brooklyn Roberts for Lawrence North. And I noticed another change to the starting lineup. They started Clea Bentley. So now Ridley's coming off the bench. Roberts is coming off the bench. Take Roberts, for example, is playing at the 11th ranked team in the country in HSE, the number 1 team in the state. She shoots 3 threes in the first quarter, the last of which is being an air ball. She goes to the bench and doesn't come back in. Okay, it's like their second game of the season. Brooklyn Roberts played chunk minutes in this basketball game on the road at the Mill against one of the best basketball teams in the state, and played well. In fact, it was Brooklyn Roberts who spun a 3 that would have tied the basketball game that looked true. Conversely, if you look at Noblesville, the development of the kids that aren't named Meredith Tittner, Kate Rollins is just making huge plays. The beginning of that basketball game, they are running stuff through Cece Quigley, who delivered. I mean, I think she had 3 consecutive layups on the right side because they threw the ball into her. Hutchinson looks more confident. So I just a global thought that as I watched that basketball game, yes, Kiki was great, and Hertz and Tippner and Thomas and all of those kids that we know and follow. But there were big time minutes and big time plays being made by these quote unquote role players who are now 15, 16 games into their varsity experience. And I think they're figuring to be big pieces of the future. And more recently, a postseason run.
Let's talk about Noblesville, and I buried too another part of the lead. They closed that game out with Tippner on the bench. She fell out late, and for them to address that, the press the way that they did and handle themselves the way they did. I mean, they guarded that last possession pretty well and had Ellen kind of in scramble mode to close out the win and keep that thing from going to overtime was impressive. The way that Noblesville was able to slow down the game was impressive. Like, they got LN out of its comfort zone, and it took the Cats a long time to adjust to that. And that's a credit to coaching, and just they played the same defense the entire way. I think it was just their standard kind of zone, and they slowed it down. And there's a little stretch there where Donna's like, yeah, it started to get a lot of hand. It started going a little bit fast, and she really had to dial back. The girls was like, no, we like to play fast, but we aren't going to try that against a team like this. And said, LN's up there with LC. Like, those are probably the 2 best teams when it comes to playing in transition like that. So they knew what they wanted to do, and they executed it really, really well there on the defensive end.
And then to comments on the other side too, LN has the game against Lawrence Central coming up, which the make of their basketball team again is their defensive prowess and their 1-3-1 with the different changes in the levels. So their comfort level in playing against an odd front trap is pretty high. And then Donna sitting back in that flat 3-2, it can kind of bother you a little bit if you're not making shots and not knowing where the rotations are, and all week you had focused maybe on the 1-3-1. I'm not sure if that happens, but it's definitely something that I was curious about going into. And I was like, oh, well, here's LN getting to play against Donna's rendition of the 1-3-1. And then shortly after, now you get to play against Janon's version of the 1-3-1. Donna took it away from us. Donna's dealing, and I think I think the fact that she can run different defenses, she can run the 1-3-1, she can run the flat 3-2, and then we talked about it several times throughout the different episodes. Their ability to junk with Kate Rollins, I think, is whether it be in box and one, most commonly box and one. I assume they have a triangle and 2 option if they ever needed it, but now there's comfort in the rotations. I sat front row for the Cathedral game, and they're just they're so long. Like, they close the gaps. They're really, really good. It's different. It's more of a trap on the ball, steal off the ball concept with Noblesville. Lawrence Central, and it's not a Noblesville identity where they trap off the ball and Lawrence Central doesn't, but Lawrence Central is so long and athletic and bothersome on the ball that they create a little bit more deflection. So it is a little bit different, but the rotations of all of these kids like Rollins and Hutch and Quigley, it looks really, really good. And Donna is Donna-ing.
Yeah.
That's like turn her name into a verb, I guess.
Yeah. it's what amazed me, and I want to talk about Kate Rollins in a second because that kid's amazing. It's amazing just the progression of Noblesville. Ashland Shade, the first year that I got here, obviously a really good team, state champions. The next year they lose Shade suddenly. Not everybody, I was not among those party, but some people were saying, oh, this team's going to be really take a step back now, and instead they sustained. Last year, I was curious to see, I still had faith that I was curious to see how big of a step back they would have just with, some injuries and whatnot. And instead they rallied through and got to semi-state when a lot of people weren't expecting them to. And then this year, this was the year where on paper they should be nowhere as good as they are. And instead they're better at this point than they were last year, partially due to health. But like you said, I mean, just the progression from watching them against Chart at the beginning of the year, I think 2 games in to yesterday, it's a night and day difference. And it's so cool seeing them and dozens of other teams too, just how much they've grown. And it still feels like they're still pushing towards that ceiling. Like they haven't maxed out yet and maxed out on that talent. Let's talk about Kate Rollins. You were texting me during the Cathedral game, impressed with her. I was texting you yesterday during the LN game, just impressed with her. I mean, the kid just hits big shots. She's so good defensively, and she's got some fire to her. Donna alluded to that afterward, just talking about her feistiness and competitiveness, and she described her as a menace, Danny.
Yeah, she's definitely edgy. Like there was a cool moment, and you can't get it on stream. I wasn't there, but there was a cool moment where she was chirping with Jemiah, and we look. I say it with a smile because I personally love it. Okay,
everybody loved it.
I just do, and yeah, and you were saying, I think when we were talking off air before, that both Steven and Donna both liked it as well.
Just but that Kate,
the Kate Rollins, the Kate Rollins effect. Yes, you're going to ask her to face guard like a Maya Makaluski or something like that. And you're going to ask her to make those hustle plays. And you're going to ask her to galvanize the team emotionally by getting in Jemiah Thomas's face and so on and so forth. That also woke up LN, by the way, too. Okay. But she's starting to produce real basketball plays. And I don't mean to be disrespectful when I say that, but like I can't remember the opponent where Tippner got the deflection and then she ran Tippner over and then had the game winner. Who was that? That was like the holiday tournament against, it had Norwell to be either Norwell or Valpo, one of those two teams.
Norwell, okay? Yep.
But she had a huge strong side corner 3 in this basketball game. And Meredith is relentless at attacking the middle of the floor, relentless. And particularly when she gets a matchup. So she'll set like an away screen and kind of roll back and curl. If she gets a switch, she's very, very good at recognizing if she does have a matchup that she likes to drive. And Kate's gotten really good at just understanding, okay, Tippner's in the middle of the floor. She's going to go. Let me get in her vision. If it's strong side corner, that's the easy one. But we talk about no absolutes in basketball. If there is an absolute, it's help off the strong side corner, goes to the corner, okay? But she's making that 3. I don't have the percentages. I don't have the numbers. Just anecdotally, though, she hit a big-time 3 right in front of where their student section normally sits, that when you're in a one-possession basketball game either way, it's debilitating. And so she's starting to make plays like that that makes Noblesville – I don't want to say a tough out because that's obvious. Is maybe the ability of these kids to make shots wouldn't surprise anybody if they hosted HSE on Saturday night as sectional 8 and beat them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I really hope that's what the bracket sets up for. I'm not predicting it or calling for it, but it'd be really nice if those two teams were seated opposite on the bracket like we've kind of had the past 2 years. Somehow, some way, they've managed to get the sectional 8 bracket right. So knock on wood that this asinine lotto ball system works out in our favor again. Let's talk about Lawrence North, and I'll start the conversation with Jemiah Thomas, who Donna Buckley was effusive in her praise. Steve and I talked about her for a while, and just watching the game, I mean, game changer. Most obvious statement of the year, but just such a big body inside. She gets into foul trouble early because Noblesville made it a point to go after her and try and get her off the floor because they were so concerned about her. Donna described her as a unicorn in girls basketball, just like that true post presence, similar to an Avery Gordon, but just the physicality. And then when they get going, it was because her and Kai Hurt were battling for offensive rebounds inside, with Jemiah clogging up space. And then once that kid gets going, man, I mean, she's hard to stop.
Yeah, and Kiki Butler had 2 offensive rebounds and 2 putbacks late when they were making their run as well. So they are relentless on the glass. But yeah, Jemiah, the way that she's come around, having a big kid that you can throw the ball into is a value. Having a big kid that you can guard CC Quigley without having to bring a bunch of help is a value. But being able to provide point production also, sometimes as the opposing coach, you want them to throw it in because it's like, hey, now to go back to Warsaw, like Bricker and Zartman don't have the ball. Somebody else has the ball. So I mean, that's a bad example because of Winchester. But you get what I'm saying on that is, Kiki Butler and Kaya Hurt are so good that sometimes you're okay throwing the ball to somebody else, whether it be a Winston and in this case, Jemiah Thomas. But if Jemiah is going to hurt you with point production, it's just going to ease things up. That might be why Kalia Bentley is shooting 41% from 3 as a kid who's really playing her first lion's share of varsity basketball. I mean, I know age-wise she's not a freshman or a sophomore, but she's really playing a Kamara Mills-like role, and the kid is performing. So, yeah, everything is connected here. And where I would have said going into the season, everything is going to be based on Kaya Hurt's ability to get 2 feet in the paint and Kiki Butler's ability to get 2 feet in the paint. It actually has turned out that in addition to that, to those 2 things, now it's getting 2 feet in the paint with pass touches that are coming through Jemiah Thomas.
And it's such, like you said, it's just such a valuable weapon when a team is able to slow it down and force you in the half court. Because if you're not getting anything on the perimeter and against a team like Noblesville who's used to seeing those guards, then you kind of have a safety valve. You mentioned a bunch of names there, and that's something else that's really stood out to me with Lawrence North, especially early in games. It's just, and I don't know if it's a conscious effort or just something that's been clicking. I meant to ask Steven about this, but everybody's getting involved early. Everybody's activated early. Kalia Bentley had a couple threes early on against Valpo the other day. I think she had one yesterday too against Noblesville. Butler Ridley. Winston got going a little bit there late and makes some big plays defensively. Kaya Hurt, once she gets going, then, I mean, it just, everybody goes. And then by the end of the game, nobody has like that huge 20-burger game usually, but a bunch of kids have in that 7 to 14 point range. And that's how LN wins games. And that's just so valuable, especially in a sectional tournament, especially in rivalry games like we're going to see here Thursday. Because it's like if one kid gets shut down, that's fine because they're confident enough to have somebody else step up there. And I mean, during that 5-game win streak, as we alluded to earlier, I mean, everybody was firing on all cylinders for LN. And we kind of saw what we've been waiting to see from this team all season, if I'm being honest, of just that depth, the different ways that they can beat you. And it's really fun to watch when they're clicking like that.
It is. They're balanced. You guys know how I feel about Butler. I think Butler I think she's electric. She knows that she's got to increase her 3-point percentage because she's going to continue to get looks. But that kid's so explosive. We know Kaya Hurt is, but you're right. I mean, it's a fun team to watch, and when they're clicking on all cylinders, but unfairly to Lawrence North, you said it's Thursday. LCLN is Thursday. We'll see so. Thursday. I mean, it's just look. It's such an important step for them to climb, and if they do get beat on Thursday, they'll push the hill away from themselves down into sectionals. But at some point in time, they're going to have to stare LC in the face and get them because that's how they're going to measure their season. And I think they're completely okay with that. I think that, and that's why Steven, after these basketball games, they're not looking at record and they're just looking for things that they can draw out of the Noblesville experience to help them put together a long postseason run. But we're going to see on Thursday because that one is it gives us something different every time, doesn't it?
It does. I'm really looking forward to that game. I mean, it's going to be interesting. Lawrence Central has bounced back really well from the loss to HSC, as we kind of all expected them to, and now it's time for another test. And two, we should talk about them together before we move on. They're going to be at this big event out in Ohio over Martin Luther King Day weekend, where they're going to be playing some nationally ranked teams with LN and LC. We'll see some big tests. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that game Thursday night. That's going to be a slobber knocker. But looking at it on paper, and I think just mentally and knowing the parties involved, it feels like a significantly more important game than LN. LC last year got over the hump with that win at the Marion County tournament where they came out of nowhere and pulled off this miraculous win. And that kind of, in my opinion, was their sort of sliding doors moment. And this feels like it could be that for LN, where it's just like you got to get there and get over the hump at some point. And it's kind of like it needs to happen here. Otherwise, you're in a weird place going into a potential sectional match.
Yeah, and you mentioned the Ohio thing. I'll just comment because I'm familiar with Purcell Marion. Purcell Marion is super good. Now they've battled health issues, and I don't know if everybody's going to play when they play LC. But they got a kid by the name of Dee Alexander, who anybody that follows Indiana girls high school basketball in the Midwest is going to know. She's one of the best players in the world at the class. But they have Samaya Wilkins, they have the Miller twin. I mean, they're loaded. And the guy that coaches them, a guy by the name of Jamar Mosley, I think they've won 2 state championships. But they're really good. That will be a very fun basketball game. I would say test, but it's just a contest is what it is, right? Purcell Marion's good. Lawrence Central's good. They're going to play. Someone's going to win. And I think the conclusion will be closed after that. But if you like, I mean, there's going to be so many kids with 4 stars, 5 stars, Division I recruits. That's just another one of those Lawrence Central games against Purcell Marion that'll be viewed nationally.
That'll be fun. Another game that we should talk about yesterday, if for no other reason than just how crazy it was. Zionsville leads Pike by 8 late in the third quarter, 34-29 after 3, and then Pike goes on this crazy 37-4 run to win over the final 8 minutes. Just an impressive performance by Pike. Zionsville shows us something. I think that Sectional 8 this year is going to be – it may not be as star-packed as it was in years past, but I think there are a lot of dangerous teams working in there. Zionsville, Westfield, those two stick out in particular. We'll talk about Carmel here in a second. But an impressive win for Pike, and they're kind of ramping things back up here down the stretch, and they're going to close out with LN in a couple weeks.
Yeah, I wish we could have talked to Keith this morning. I know he loves flying under the radar, and I tease him as a friend. It's you can't do it when you're one of the best teams in 4A in the state. I mean, it's just who they are. But to spin this forward, they're getting healthier with Sanaya Smith. Now Keith, who I'm very familiar with his offensive playbook and the things that he likes to do and the concepts that he likes to coach through, he's starting to get a little bit more complete. I've talked to him a few times over the last couple of weeks. He's starting to ask scout specific questions, which indicates to me that he likes where he is in regards to what's implemented. So now he's looking at specials to put in for certain teams. But Hank, like Brownsburg, Avon, Plainfield, Pike, recency bias with the 21-point victory over Zionsville, one might say, hey, Pike is the leader in that sectional. Have they given you enough to say that they're the favorite in that sectional now? I know we talk about how they're good, but do you think they're the team to beat there, or do you still think Brownsburg, Plainfield? What's your take?
I'd like to say yes, just to guess like Keith a little bit. I'd like to say that they're the favorites to win it all. Again, just to guess like Keith a little bit. That's a tough question. That's a mean question, Daniel.
It is really a mean question.
I don't know. I think they're obviously one of the favorites. I think right now I'm still staying with Plainfield. I'll get to see Plainfield tomorrow night, but I just think the Menser and Williams of it all for Plainfield makes a big difference. But then, like you said, Pike's getting healthier. Alana Devine's been on a heater. Marley Jeffers is quietly just averaging a double-double per game. I mean, the kid's a machine. She's been phenomenal. I think Plainfield, but Pike's certainly trending up the quickest. Plainfield's maybe the most battle-tested. And then there's Brownsburg, who's kind of not come out of nowhere, but they're way beyond expectations. Like, I was not expecting them to be this good. And here they are, and they have the best player in that section, I would say, or at least the most unique in Avery Gordon. And, that's just such a difficult matchup. It's crazy. And then Avon's in a unique spot because they're in kind of a rut right now where they've lost a bunch of games against some quality teams and kind of waiting to see if they're able to bounce back. But this is all a long-winded way of answering. One, you're a dick. Two, I think I would go Plainfield as the favorite for now. Brownsburg and Pike both kind of tied for very close seconds. And then lest we forget, Ben Davis, Stan Benj was on the show last week. He's got that team playing well. They won again last night. And
that's right.
They're just hanging around, and strength of schedule is always something that I go back to. And you got to mention it there too. But they're a young team that's winning games. They're a young team that's come back and beaten a good Ron Colley team that hung with Franklin Central last night. They're the type of team that could crash that bracket. And in talking to the coaches within that sectional, that one's going to be so draw dependent because it seems like everybody kind of has somebody else's number. And if the pieces line up right, that's going to dictate who's the favorite, who's going to go where. You know what I mean? Like,
yep.
Brownsburg, Avon kind of thing. Plainfield's kind of had Brownsburgs. We're going to see them here tomorrow night in the Hendricks County Tournament Championship game. Pike's the new kid on the block, so to speak, with these organized sectional. But that one's going to be so draw contingent. I'm fascinated to see it. But, I mean, that's probably the best sectional in the state, right?
Yeah, I mean, the computers like Brownsburg. I mean, they've actually vaulted Brownsburg all the way up to number 2 in the state, according to the computers and what that formula is again. Yeah. But there's Pike, right there. It is the 9th ranked team in 4A, 11th ranked team overall. Plainfield is the 3rd ranked team in the sectional and 14th overall. So, yeah, I mean, Brownsburg, Pike, and Plainfield, gosh. What a trio. I'm not picking it.
Unbelievable.
Back to you.
Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it. No, that one's going to be crazy good. I'm excited for that. One other game that I wanted to at least touch on, that was Bellmont picking off Columbia City 53-41. They take the driver's seat in their conference. Ashley Blake had 25 points with a couple triples. Gwen Laurent adds 9. Emily Blake adds 8. So just a well-rounded performance for them. Addie Baxter, I think, had 26, 12 of 18 on free throws. So impressive win, statement kind of win for Bellmont, which is in that section with Norwell. I'm curious. Those are kind of like the 3 top dogs. It feels like out of the 3A North, and they're all kind of clustered together there. But a nice win for Bellmont, and it adds some real shine to their resume.
Bigger win for Bellmont than it is a loss for Columbia City. But I think it's Blakey,
okay.
The Blakey sisters. There's Emily Blakey, who's the standout senior, and then Ashley Blakey comes out and has the game high. But the reason why I say it's a more important basketball game is for Bellmont, for our more important for our eyes is I think it was non-debatable. I think that Columbia City was going to be a threat. We just didn't know a lot about Bellmont, but to be able to go into the birdcage and get a win against Addison Baxter, I think might have even been their senior night for all I know. But for them to be able to do that and to introduce ourselves and introduce the Blakey sisters and Bellmont to the Scores Table podcast, there's a real good chance that we're going to be talking about them a lot here in about 3 weeks because they're good. They are really, really good.
Absolutely. One other thing that I wanted to touch on, Danny, before I throw it to you and we kind of wrap up for the day. Carmel, they suffered a significant blow Thursday against Center Grove with leading scorer Izzy Shepard going down to a torn ACL. She had 21 of the team's 30 points at the time. She went down and was averaging about 17 points against, this is crazy, the state's 7th toughest schedule. She's doing that. Got a message from her, hoping to get her in for surgery soon so she can start looking ahead to college. But just wishing her, Izzy, a speedy recovery. It's a tough break for her. But, the tip of the cap to the Hounds for bouncing back Saturday with a 59-49 overtime win over Heritage Christian after what I'm sure was an emotionally draining couple of days for them.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It's been a very up and down season for Carmel, but I do want to give Izzy Shepard her flowers. And let me contextualize this a little bit. So her last name Shepard. I think most people that follow Indiana girls basketball or Indiana boys basketball will know that that's a very big last name, particularly on the north side of Indianapolis. In fact, on Saturday night, Billy Shepard had a court dedication. So now his name is actually on the court. Doing a lot of this from memory. I wasn't sure you're going to bring Izzy up, so I apologize to the Shepard family if I mess any of this up. But the injury to Izzy Shepard also marks the end of one of the Shepard generations. I think that first Shepard generation, Billy Shepard won 1968 Mr. Basketball. Dave Shepard in 1970 won Mr. Basketball. Steve Shepard in 1977 won a state championship and I think was an Indiana All-Star. And then their kids, like Jeff Shepard, who's Izzy's dad, went on to Huntington and broke all sorts of records up there. Scott Shepard, who went down to Florida State and played. There was Elisa Shepard that was mixed in there. And then there was another generation of their kids, like Quinn Shepard was in there. Stacia Shepard was in there. And I think Izzy, and I pause here because I'm trying to recall, but I think Izzy Shepard is the last Shepard within that generation. So within that community, that's a very big deal. And our heart breaks for Izzy that it was that her last season was taken from her. But part of a much bigger legacy. And I just wanted to give her and the family the flowers as she gets ready to undoubtedly bounce back, because she will.
Any other games, Danny, that you wanted to touch on or mention?
Let me see. So on the last podcast, I talked about Cathedral and to see if they were, Lisa Finn, she loves flying under the radar. She actually sent me a text based on probably something that I said on the last one about how, we would start talking about them more. And she very gently asked us not to. But in that Noblesville basketball game, they were 15 of 48. I say that not to outline their poor shooting, but the first question I always ask as a coach when you don't shoot the basketball well is, how did we pass it? And the passing, I think there's a direct relationship between passing and shooting. And I thought some of their reads against the run through one were a little bit slow. So I do think that they're closer to being a threat than what 15 of 48 and a 20-point loss on the road at the Mill will do. Because I do think now that they have Jada Wilson back and healthy, I do think that they do have another shot maker that's out on the floor. So they'll be a fun watch down the stretch. I went to the Park Heritage McCutcheon game yesterday, Hank. Right. Emma Simpson didn't play. So let's draw no conclusion from what we saw from Park Heritage. That was rough, to say the least. But McCutcheon here is quietly now with just, I think, maybe 3 losses. They got their 24-25 from Lily Graves, as you would suspect, but they also got 25 from Lipscomb Allen. And if they can get secondary scoring over there, there might be a little bit of a tough route. I think in Marion, I think they will likely play Homestead. If Homestead comes out of the sectional, I don't think that they would get HSC, although I assume that it's possible that they would get the Sectional 8 winner. I didn't mean to crown HSC. I'm sorry, Noblesville, but the Sectional 8 winner, Zionsville, Westfield, or whoever that would be. But Jeff Kanoy at McCutcheon, in seeing them again for the first time since the first opening game, they're another basketball team. We talked about Noblesville and Columbia City and how all of these teams are kind of like bringing along their role players. McCutcheon's the same way. They have a bunch of kids now that were contributing, but the mark and the identity of that basketball team will always be what they do defensively and mixing it up. I think they have 5 or 6 defenses that they will on the fly rotate through, whether it's a diamond full court press, whether it's a run and jump man, whether it's a 2-3, 2-3 extended. There's a ton of stuff that they will do. And they are practicing that and playing like that, because I think when and if they see a Homestead, because they're the favorites to win the sectional, the chances that we see a McCutcheon Homestead regional game at Marion is pretty high. Those are the 2 favorites to win. We know that McCutcheon's going to give Coach Parker 6 defenses that he's going to have to scout and prepare for and get his team ready, because Jeff's going to show him all 6 and he's going to change it on the fly.
Good stuff. Yeah, you mentioned McCutcheon, and just talking to Kanoy at the beginning of the season too. That's something that he talked about. They got some transfers in, some kids coming in off injuries, whatever. So it was going to take them some time to gel, and it's good to see that they are gelling and in fact picking up the heat. And we'll find out in a couple weeks actually what the sectional and the regional draws will look like. And that's a perfect segue to the future plans of the show. I think the plan is we'll at least have a live show for sure, a reaction show after the draw, similar to what we did last year. That was one of our most popular shows. So we'll bring that back. We'll have the preview shows. We're starting to ramp up our preview coverage. Same thing on IndyStar.com. I've already started mapping out some of our coverage, have some cool features in the works for that to get everybody ready and going with the most fun time of the year in February. The Hadley Crozier feature from me will publish this week. We're going to check out some games. There's Hendricks County Championship tomorrow night between Plainfield and Brownsburg. That's a very interesting game right there. And then we're going to have later in the week, like we mentioned, Lapel, Sheridan. There's LCLN. Ton of good games here this week, and I'm sure there'll be others. So you can find us bouncing around. I think we'll have a weekly show. Danny, Courtney, and I will have the gang back together, do some late season awards just for the fun of it. Something similar to what Kyle Neddenrip did on IndyStar.com. And I think that about covers it, Danny. Is there anything else that we should get to?
I mean, there's a ton that we didn't talk about, like, like KK Holman, for example, on HSC, the number 1 team in the state, is absolutely murdering right now.
Double yesterday, right?
Yeah, I mean, I don't HSC, like, it's a huge storyline, like how Brinley and Holman and Green will shoot the 3. But I think if you look back, I have no statistical basis for this. I'm doing this completely just off of anecdote. But I think if you look back to the Lawrence Central basketball game since that point, I bet KK Holman has the best 3-point percentage on HSC. Like, that kid has really elevated her level, and Maya's production hasn't really dropped either. I mean, she got another box. By the way, you turned that basketball game on yesterday, Carol, with another box and 1. I mean, every single night that kid just gets a box and 1. Somebody draped all over her. Cam Banks had 63. Make your own determination there.
We got to mention the score if we're going to mention that.
Yeah, 115-5 in a 63-point basketball game there. That's all I saw.
Yeah, a couple 1,000-point scores. Emma Anslet from Danville crossed that mark. I've been sitting on a story, but Anslet came really close to not coming back for her senior year. She was planning just to graduate early. She's dealing with some injury stuff, but decided to come back. So it's cool to see her do that, have the success she's had. I don't know if there's a more resilient team in the state off the floor than Danville. That team has been through some things, and tip of the cap to Kaylee May and those girls for staying together and soldiering through all of it. Ava Mikesell up at Northeastern also cleared 1,000 points. So I checked my bookmarks for Players of the Week stuff.
Yeah. And then I do want to correct myself from earlier, too, because as soon as I said it, I was like, that's not true. I said there can only be 15 players that have scored 2,000 points. It's 3,000 points. That is like 15 players. That's a slight difference. As I said it, I was like, wait a second. I don't think that's true, because I can think of 15 at the top of my head right now. Not to diminish 2,000, because 2,000 is quite the feat, but Jackie Young still owns the record, I think, at like 3,300 points or something like that, not 2,300. Really, really does.
It's within the margin of error. It happens.
Yeah. And you had typed it in here too. The Carmel had Elisa Williams, not Elisa Shepard. I know. I mean, we all know Elisa Shepard Stidham, and anyway, I crossed those names, and I didn't write any of that stuff down, so I was just doing it from memory and misspoke about another last name. So, Eric, correcting myself before you slide into my mentions and tell me how horrible of a person I am.
That's good. That's all right. They're distracted by that dumb question that asked Newby at the beginning of the interview, so we're fine. Did you bounce back against Anderson? No. All right. Well, I'm going to let you handle this one, buddy. All right. Well, we thank you all so much for watching. We'll be back again later this week. Be sure to subscribe to IndyStar.com, subscribe to the show on YouTube, and we'll talk to you again soon.